He swore never to love again. Not after the first time. The heartbreak had been a storm, tearing through his life, leaving behind a landscape of silent sorrow and carefully constructed walls. He built them high, brick by brick, with every tear he refused to shed, every memory he locked away. His heart, once a vibrant, open space, was now a fortress, guarded and desolate. He convinced himself it was safer this way. Love, he decided, was a gamble he couldn't afford to take twice. The risk was too great, the potential for pain too familiar. So he walked through life alone, a solitary figure, content in his self-imposed exile from affection. He found solace in routine and the predictable rhythm of his days. Work, solitude, repeat. It was a life devoid of color, but it was also a life devoid of pain. And for a long time, that was enough. He became a master of detachment, an expert at keeping people at arm's length. Friends saw him as reserved, colleagues as focused. No one saw the ghost of a past love that haunted his quiet moments, the reason behind his impenetrable calm. He was a ship moored in a safe harbor, refusing to set sail into the unpredictable sea of emotion ever again, until she walked into his life. It wasn't a dramatic entrance. There was no crash of thunder, no slow-motion movie moment. She just appeared, a new face in a familiar cafe, a warm smile across a crowded room, a laugh that sounded like music he hadn't realized he'd been missing. It was subtle, an unassuming flicker of light in his monochrome world. At first, he ignored it. He was skilled at that. He treated her with the same polite indifference he showed everyone else. He reminded himself of his vow, of the peace he had fought so hard to find in his solitude. This was just a fleeting distraction, a momentary test of his resolve. He would hold firm. He had to. He told himself she was just another person passing through, a temporary splash of color that would soon fade back to gray. He was a man who had mastered the art of not feeling, and he wasn't about to let a stranger with kind eyes undo years of careful work. He believed he was immune, that his fortress was unbreachable. But she was different. She didn't try to tear down his walls. She didn't challenge his solitude or question his distance. Instead, she brought warmth to the space outside his fortress. She'd leave a book on his desk she thought he'd like, shared a funny story that had no agenda, or simply offered a genuine "How was your day?" that expected nothing in return. She had a light about her, an effortless kindness that seemed to seep through the cracks he didn't even know his walls had. He found himself watching her, intrigued. He noticed the way she'd tilt her head when she was listening intently, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she truly smiled. These small observations were like seeds being planted in the barren soil of his heart. And to his utter shock, they began to grow. He started to look forward to seeing her, a feeling so foreign it was almost alarming. The gray of his world started to feel less like peace and more like emptiness. He fought it, of course. Every step forward was met with 2 steps back into the safety of his shell. He'd have a conversation with her that felt easy, natural, and then he'd retreat for days, terrified of the feeling. The ghost of his past would whisper warnings in his ear. "Remember the pain," it would say. "This is how it starts. Don't let your guard down." And he would listen. He'd remind himself that a cracked heart never fully heals, that the scars are a permanent reminder of vulnerability. He tried to convince himself that what he was feeling wasn't real, that it was just loneliness playing tricks on his mind. He was a man who had been burned by the fire of love, and the mere sight of a flickering candle sent him running for cover. He saw danger in her smile, a threat in her kindness. He was running from her. But more than that, he was running from himself, from the part of him that yearned to feel again. But she was patient. She seemed to understand something about him without him ever saying a word. She didn't push when he pulled away. She simply remained a steady, gentle presence in his life. It was her consistency that began to chip away at his defenses. One day, he was having a particularly rough day. Everything that could go wrong. He was coiled tight with stress and frustration, his usual stoicism wearing thin. He thought he was hiding it well, but she saw it. She didn't offer platitudes or empty advice. She just quietly placed a cup of his favorite tea on his desk and said, "It looks like you could use this." She didn't wait for a thank you. She just smiled softly and walked away. In that simple, profound act of kindness, a major wall inside him crumbled. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was an act of humanity. and it reached him in a way no grand gesture ever could. He realized she wasn't a threat. She was a safe harbor. He started letting her in, little by little. It began with small talk, which slowly deepened into real conversations. He found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone, sharing fragments of his thoughts, his dreams, his fears. And she listened. She truly listened, not just to his words, but to the silence in between. With her, he didn't have to pretend. He didn't have to be the stoic, unbreakable man he presented to the world. He could just be him. He shared a story about his past, not the whole story of his heartbreak, but a piece of it. He watched her face, expecting pity or judgment, but he saw only empathy. She didn't try to fix him or his past. She simply accepted it as part of who he was. This acceptance was a balm to his wounded soul. It was in these shared moments of vulnerability that he felt his fortress finally beginning to dissolve. Not torn down by force, but melted away by a gentle, persistent warmth. One evening, they were walking together after work, the city lights beginning to sparkle around them. The conversation flowed easily, as it often did now. He found himself laughing, a deep, genuine laugh that felt rusty and new all at once. And in that moment, he looked at her. Truly looked at her, and the realization hit him with the force of a tidal wave. A was in love. The thought didn't terrify him as it once would have. Instead, it felt right. It felt like coming home after a long, lonely journey. All the vows he had made, all the walls he had built, they all seemed foolish in the face of this feeling. He had sworn never to love again, not to protect himself from pain, but because he didn't think his heart was capable of it. It was Ronge. She hadn't just walked into his life. She had walked into his heart and shown him that it was not a ruin, but a garden waiting to bloom again. She didn't demand his love. She simply showed him how to find it within himself once more. He stopped walking and turned to face her. The bustling city faded into the background. For the first time in years, he let his heart be seen in his eyes. He didn't have a grand speech prepared. He just had the truth. He told her about the promise he had made to himself, about the fortress he had built around his heart. He told her how he never thought he would feel this way again. And then, he told her that she had changed everything. He told her that her kindness, her patience, and her light had shown him that a life without love wasn't safety. It was just an absence. He confessed that he was falling in love with her. It was the bravest thing he had done in years. As he spoke, he saw her eyes fill with a warmth that mirrored his own. She reached out and gently took his hand. Her touch wasn't just a connection of skin. It was a connection of souls. She didn't need to say a word. Her smile said everything. In that moment, he knew he wasn't just starting a new chapter. He was starting a whole new book. The man who swore never to love again had finally found a love worth breaking every promise for. And this time, he knew it was a love that would build, not break. Thank you so much for watching this noble heart story. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story of love and hope. We'll see you in the next video.